Now we're about to chat with the expert behind Phil Steele's College Football Preview, the most accurate magazine over the last 31 years. And this year's edition has 376 pages of detailed information for all of you college football fans. It is my honor to welcome to the show for the very first time, the one and only Phil Steele. Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, and welcome to Hawaii.
Well, a real pleasure. Appreciate you having me on, and great to talk to you for the first time.
Yeah, and I've been a huge fan of yours. I've been reading the magazine for years now, ever since I really got into this sports industry here in Hawaii. But before we get into talking about Hawaii football and the Mountain West and everything, I just really want to know, where did your deep love for football come from, and what initially inspired you to do this level of a magazine in the first place, and what continues to drive you to do so?
I appreciate that. Yeah. Always been just a huge football fan ever since I was little. Grew up in Cleveland. The Browns were really good when I was young, and so became a fan that way. And then Ohio State, of course, was big back then. But what got me into it, I started a handicapping industry, or a handicapping service, I should say. And I would go out and try to compile all the information on all the teams. And there was like 30 magazines on the market, and I would buy each one, and I'd write down in my little notebook all the stuff that every magazine had. And then when I was done going through 30 magazines, I couldn't even get a starting lineup for some teams. There just wasn't enough information in the magazines for me. So I started compiling the information myself, had the staff put together pages with each player, their history, all their stats, and I had everything compiled. We'd get the rosters from the schools, and one day somebody came in the office and said, "Why don't you turn that into a magazine?" So we did, and it has probably 3 to 4 times the amount of information in any other magazine. The first year, we only had, I only covered 88 teams, didn't even cover the MAC or the Sun Belt, and we put it out as black and white on newsprint, and we were just one of 30 magazines on the market. But the more people got it in their hands and realized there was just so much more information in here than all the other magazines combined, it just grew and grew and grew to the point now where we're the best-selling magazine of any kind in Barnes & Noble, which is a big honor to have. And it's now 376 pages with 2 full pages on all 138 teams. So you get more information in the magazine than all the other magazines out there combined.
Yeah, and we've been encouraging people to get it, especially if they're a huge fan of football and college football. And someone that was part of the magazine, so to speak, as a player, now the head coach, our head coach here for the Rainbow Warriors, Timmy Chang. Now, with what you've seen, before we get into this current season, with what you've seen and observed in college football for all of these years, what can you say about the job Coach Timmy has done through his first 4 seasons, really bringing this program back to life, and obviously in the midst of such a tumultuous time in college sports?
Yeah, and I always have a great conversation with Coach Chang. And, going back to in his senior year of playing for Hawaii, I picked him to win the Heisman, and he did not win it that year. So each year I'm like, I'd be like, Coach, you didn't win the Heisman for me that year. I'm disappointed. But I think he's doing a tremendous job. And what I like best is that he's doing a homegrown team. And what I mean by that is he's not relying on bringing in 50 new guys in the transfer portal each and every year, like a lot of the group of 6 teams are. And the reason for that is in the group of 6, I'll be going over the rosters with the coach, and they'll say, "Oh, Phil, this guy's really good, and this and this and this." So he won't be here next year, meaning he'll probably get bought by another team. But Coach Chang's doing a tremendous job retaining the players that he had from the previous team. Yes, he's using the portal. He's bringing in guys like Caleb Brown, a cornerback from Virginia Tech. He's bringing in Akani up front on the defensive line from Utah. That's great, but he's also retaining the players, and they're actually number 26 on my homegrown chart. Most of the homegrown teams are your P4 teams, so he's doing a really good job in that area. And I like the fact that, when you look at Hawaii, they've made strides each and every year. They opened up 3-10, then they went to 5-8, 5-7. All the way up to 9-4 last year. I think he's finally hitting his stride, and I think good things are in the offing for Hawaii this year.
Yeah, and so much so that you even have the confidence that potentially they could go undefeated in the Mountain West with a quite favorable schedule, so to speak, with a lot of the top teams that you have projected Hawaii to play them at home and not having Air Force on their schedule this year. But I do have to ask, it did come out since, after the publication of the magazine, that there is some uncertainty with the availability of Pefele Ashlock, who you did have on your first team. So does that change your outlook of Hawaii's season a little bit, or do you think they'll still have what it takes to compete for a conference championship? Depending, we don't know the status yet and when Pefele will be available, but say he's not available for the first few games. What is kind of your outlook for Hawaii if they were not to have him?
Well, the good thing about Hawaii and Coach Chang is they always develop receivers. So, it's an offense that whoever's out there on the field is going to get a lot of catches, get a lot of notoriety. I think bringing in a guy like Audric Harris from Washington was a big plus to have him at the receiver spot. And also they brought in from Virginia Tech and Delvin Elves. So I think even if Ashlock is not there, they'll develop receivers. And having the veteran quarterback in Alejado, I think, is massive for the team. And having a solid offensive line as well. In fact, Coach Chang told me that last year he had questions on the offensive line, but this year he feels much better about it. So if you have a solid offensive line, solid quarterback, better run game. I look for Cam Barfield to have a breakout season this year after having just 371 yards last year. With that supporting cast, I think you'll see some receivers emerge. So I'm still just as bullish on Hawaii. Got to take care of business at home, and they get most of the big games at home this year. And if they do that, I think they're a legitimate contender in the Mountain West.
I love that. And we Hawaii fans love to hear that as we are joined by Phil Steele, the brains behind the operation of Phil Steele's college football preview. All right, let's take a look a little bit at the defensive side and what Dennis Thurman has been able to do with this Hawaii defense, really elevating it, so to speak. So what can you say about Hawaii's defense and your outlook for them this season?
Yeah, he's doing a heck of a job. And, you go back to last year with Hawaii, they cut it to, when he took over, they had allowed 32 points per game the previous year, cut it to 26, cut it to 24. And I think they could improve once again, even though only 3 starters are back. They lose a lot off the defensive front. That's one of the areas where Coach Chang hit the portal, knowing that they had a weakness there in the defensive line with all the players they lost, brought in a lot of players from the portal. I like the fact that the majority of them have experience. To me, that's the key when you're bringing in a portal player, if they have the experience. You don't want the 5-star that hasn't played. You want the guy that, even if they come from FCS, has the experience level, comes in and plays, and that really is a big factor. You look at the secondary, though. Elijah Palmer, I think, is an NFL caliber guy, probably the best nickelback in the conference. And then, as mentioned, Caleb Brown coming in from Virginia Tech at the cornerback spot. He's a guy that's got plenty of starts under his belt there. He started in 3 different years. And I think the secondary will be solid. They did lose a couple of key vets on the defensive side, but getting Otis back at middle linebacker is huge. This is going to be your typical solid Hawaii defense under Coach Thurman.
Looking ahead now to Hawaii's opening game in week 0, Stanford. That's where they got to go on the road, tested right away. Not only do they play a P4 opponent, but as we've known, Hawaii has gotten better on the road, looking back to last season, but still a lot to prove. And as far as consistency of winning when they are away from Ching Field. But in your forecast, you have the Cardinal at the bottom of the ACC, only ahead of Boston College. Stanford is anywhere from a 3.5 to a 4-point favorite, depending on where you look. What does this matchup look like to you on paper, considering you do have Hawaii pretty high up there in the Mountain West?
Yeah, I've got the game pick 'em, so I'm leaning with Hawaii plus the points in this one. And we saw last year when these two played, Hawaii got the win at home, 23-20. As you mentioned, though, it is different for Hawaii at home and on the road, especially under Coach Chang, with a record of 18-11 at home and 4-18 on the road. But I like the way they played on the road last year. Stanford has a new head coach. They also have a lot of transfers coming in. So I think playing them week 1 is a good time to play Stanford while they're still getting the kinks out with the new head coach coming in and the changes that they're going through. And I think Hawaii's got a shot at winning the opener, even on the road. It's going to be a great game. Just like last year was a great game. And I remember last year when these two were playing, I think Alejado got injured during the game in the second half, and the offense sort of went out the window a little bit. But I think as long as he stays healthy, they got a shot at pulling the upset there.
Yeah, we definitely don't want the same start that Hawaii had against Stanford last year, especially because it is on the road, a little bit more difficult for you to recover there. You did mention Hawaii or just teams bringing in maybe some players with experience, even if it is from the FCS level. Now, I do want to talk about one of the new teams coming in here for football in the Mountain West in North Dakota State. Dominated the FCS for years, but making the jump up to FBS still a different challenge. You have the Bison projected near the top of the Mountain West in their first year here. What gives you the confidence that they'll be able to compete immediately?
Yeah, I think talent-wise, when you look at these guys, they recruit well. They are a homegrown team as well. They did a great job retaining players. They didn't lose a lot to the portal. They didn't really add a lot to the portal. They're just a team that likes to recruit players, develop players. Now, they've got a question mark at quarterback, but Coach Polasek pointed out that they've had 5 straight draft picks at the quarterback position, and he feels confident that they will have a quarterback emerge. And that's big. You look at their strengths, it would be the offensive line led by Griffin Empey, who actually made the cover of my West Coast magazine, and then Keenan Wilson on the defensive tackle spot, a top-notch player there as well. They do bring in some transfers in the back 7 of the secondary, but overall it's a talented team, and they're used to winning. Now, the reason I picked them actually 5th in the Mountain West this year is the fact that the other 4 teams that I have at the top of the Mountain West, which are Air Force, Hawaii, UNLV, and New Mexico, they have to play all 4 of those teams on the road. And those are 4 interesting settings. Hawaii, the trip to the islands. You've got Air Force with the Service Academy at home. UNLV, you're playing at Raider Stadium. And New Mexico, you got the altitude to deal with. So there's a lot of tough road trips for the Bison, but it wouldn't surprise me if they're contending at the end of the year.
Yeah, they really didn't make it easy with that schedule either when I saw it come out. Hawaii, on the other hand, as I mentioned, has a pretty favorable schedule, all things considering, as we are joined by Phil Steele of Phil Steele's college football preview. Again, 376 pages of detailed information for all of you college football fans out there. I want to bring it back home to the home team and talk about the quarterback situation a little bit. Micah Alejado, obviously the clear QB1, phenomenal year last year. Not only your first team, but Mountain West preseason, all conference, and offensive player of the year. What can you say about him? Because coming into this level, right, a lot of people were saying some things about his stature, but what has impressed you, especially after he was had a full season technically as the QB1, but also got injured last year, but proved enough that he is the guy. So what has kind of impressed you about Micah Alejado so far?
Well, the first thing was, the injury he suffered last year, and then not being 100% early in the year, but overcoming that was really a big thing. And then now this is another year as a starting quarterback, and I think the injury affected him all of last year. To have him back fully healthy, I think that's going to be outstanding. He had a really good spring, and he's somebody that I think is going to have a big year. And then you look at the backups. Coach Chang likes all 3 quarterbacks he's got. Bjorn Jurgensen is a guy that transfers in from Virginia. He's got a great arm, and he's the fastest quarterback in the room. But having a 100% healthy Alejado for the entire season, I think that's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, and that's what we're hoping for. I think a lot of us here, when we talk about it, that Hawaii's key to success is the health of Micah Alejado, because you're spot on as what we saw, what he was able to do when he wasn't fully healthy. We need a healthy Micah Alejado. All right, a couple more for you before I let you go. Again, appreciate you for taking the time to join us. Who maybe in the Mountain West, like even based on your predictions, but maybe the bottom half of your predictions, maybe what's one team that could potentially surprise everybody?
Well, I do think personally that the Mountain West is your top 5 teams and then your bottom 5 teams. I think New Mexico, UNLV, Air Force, Hawaii, and North Dakota State are all legitimate contenders for it. The bottom half would be Wyoming, Nevada, UTEP, San Jose, and Northern Illinois. I guess the one team that would concern me would, as far as being chance to jump from the bottom level to the top, And it's one that where you look at them on paper and you say, well, I don't know how good they're going to be. I mean, San Jose last year was just 3-9. They only returned 2 starters on offense and 1 on defense. But Coach Niumatalolo, when I talked to him his first year at San Jose, he barely knew his roster. In fact, it was an unusual call. Talking to him at Navy all those years, we would spend hour plus going over every player on the roster. And his first year at San Jose, he's like, Phil, I don't know. I haven't seen the guy. A lot of these guys came in after spring, and I didn't get a lot of information from him. Yeah, that team went 7-6, which surprised me. Equally surprising was last year when he had a veteran team and they dropped back to 3-9. So I think he's back in the situation he was in 2024 when they were completely under the radar, had zero expectations, but went 7-6. And that to me says good coaching and that he could possibly pull a surprise here this year.
And we're looking forward to hosting the Spartans at least this year and have a different result than the University of Hawaii, as we call it now, the unofficial Hawaii Bowl, with a lot of the coaches there being homegrown here in Hawaii originally. All right, Phil, I want to ask you a general question now. We talked about the transfer portal and just how chaotic college football is. Has that, the transfer portal, kind of changed how you evaluate teams, and has it made your job and analysis a little more difficult?
Yeah, it definitely has. And that's a good part of it is that this year I was able to talk to 133 of the 138 coaches out there, go over their rosters with them. That helps. The fact that I compile extensive stats on every single player helps. But I'll tell you what made the best thing for this year was there was no second spring portal window. Every coach I talked to this year, they'd be like, hey, Phil, how you doing? Expecting me to say, oh, good. How about yourself? And I would say, Coach, I am doing great. There is no second transfer portal window. I don't have to rewrite 138 teams all in the month of May and switch out positions and update my power ratings. You know what? Every coach came back and told me, almost every coach to a coach said, Phil, we were more of a team this spring than we've ever been. The guys we took into the spring, we knew we were going to take into the season. The players knew they could make bonds with the player on the team, knowing they weren't going to leave after the spring. We could coach them harder. We could list a guy third string, knowing he wasn't going to leave. And the players didn't have to worry about us grabbing somebody out of the portal and replacing them. So we were much more of a team this spring, and I think that's going to give us a better brand of football this fall.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah. All right. Phil, again, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I want to kind of put a bow on this chat by just giving you the floor and anything you want to say to our fans out here in Hawaii.
Well, I appreciate that. The magazine is 376 pages. It's like getting a book, and it's got 2 full pages on all 138 teams. You get the same amount of coverage on Hawaii or Georgia State or Sacramento State that you do on Alabama and Ohio State. Now, it's only available at Barnes & Noble, or you can go online, and that is at philsteele.com. And when you go to philsteele.com to order the magazine, we're going to charge you a shipping charge. It costs to ship things, but we do give you the digital magazine absolutely free. And if you have an interest in FCS football, we actually have an FCS magazine with all 124 FCS teams, 2 full pages on each of them available on the website. So Barnes & Noble and philsteele.com, the only 2 places to get it. But you'll be using the magazine all season long, 376 pages.
Awesome. Well, with that, we appreciate you again for taking the time to join us.
Hey, a lot of fun talking football with you for the first time. We should do this every year.
Yes, we are definitely going to put it on the calendar to do it every single year.